Racetracks have the worst luck because no matter how big they are, no matter how successful they are, the complaints of noisy, rich new neighbors can shut down anything. And that can't be more true than what's happening at Laguna Seca. But the reasoning for shutting down the tracks almost feels illegal or unethical, maybe both. I'm Alex, AlexMartini with 2 underscores on Instagram, and today we're talking about cars, but more specifically, race cars being loud? Is it as ridiculous as it sounds? Yeah, because Laguna Seca was sued by a local group of residents who claim that the increase in events is causing more noise. According to the complaints, this lawsuit just last month, it was because higher permitted noise levels, additional track rental days where noise exceeded 100 decibels, increased traffic, inadequate water supply, inadequate water quality, inadequate sewage disposal, and expansion of camping grounds are causing grief in the local landscape. And who's filing the lawsuit of this? Well, a group called the Highway 68 Coalition. And this is where things get weird. Remember that name. Now, over the years, racetracks have lost the battle from neighbors who complain about the noise. And we sit here reading that and think, you move next to a racetrack. What did you expect? In 2016, a judge made a track pay over $100,000 in damages because of noise complaints, and people had moved closer to the Okanagan Motor Car Racetrack in Canada. That's a real thing. Just last year, a Nashville racetrack was sued to stop renovations of its track, and people claimed that there was no return on the investment from the tax dollars. And don't even get me started with what seems to be happening with Cleetus Mcfarland and his racetrack constant battle, where houses are popping up around his home, his track, and his friends' home. In the 70s and 80s, the development of these areas was unheard of. And even Sam, a friend of Cleetus, who was the closest person to the Freedom Factory, is now getting separated from the track by a road between them.
You can see the lights from the Freedom Factory right there. It's right there.
Right over there. To give you an idea how close
They're
we are.
Closing it in.
So is Laguna Seca getting sued for the same thing? I thought so. It was damn close. But from the past, now we've followed Cleetus and his racetrack story, where the situation has been that essentially developers buy farmland. They request a zoning change for that land, and at a 5-2 vote, that was approved. And what we end up with is farmers that didn't know any better. And now the approval for a 4,500 home development plan ends up suffocating this 50-year-old racetrack. Now, Laguna Seca is what I think the result of what will happen to the Freedom Factory in the next decade or so. But Laguna Seca is a really weird one. That coalition group, Highway 68, is what happens when you get into what we'll call stage 2 of the zoning battle, because here is what's happening. After developers get zoning approved through the county and development begins, people begin to move into those areas. Those people, they either know or don't know that they live right next to a racetrack and ultimately get targeted again, but not by the developer themselves, but most of the time by a coalition, a not-for-profit, a group that's shrouded behind an environmental statement or even a mask. Now, if you type in this coalition group, you'll find nothing online, not anything outside of the massive amount of articles about this recent racetrack issue, but you won't find a face, not a name, but just a P.O. box, the sign that something greater is at work. And it might sound a little tin hat to me, but I want to explain what I thought was happening. My first thought was that this coalition was actually just another situation where it was a laundered organization that hosts, at least at its core, leaders from those development companies that surround Laguna Seca. You know, pretend to be somebody you're not, pretend to be like a normal person. Instead of trying to buy the land outright, which would be a massive financial investment, they go into these areas and they go to the landowners and they light a match. Isn't the noise just too much these days? Don't you think it's gotten worse? I mean, I've just seen so much traffic, I think that they're not doing anything about it. You know, these guys need to stop hosting so many events. These coalition groups fester complaints and anonymity without ever actually telling anyone who they are. This inception causes unrest, and it goes so far as to pretend to even be local residents, to speak at local residents at these town boards, even though no one knows who they are. This is happened in the past. And to people that are in the real estate world, this is not a new strategy to trick people into doing something legal, or in this case, unethical. Laguna Seca brings in $250 million a year in revenue, and that is a hard thing to bite off if you were to just purchase it. But a lot easier way to buy that for pennies is when the track is found to have zoning issues or lack of track permits. Force them out, and all of a sudden a racetrack is worthless. At least, that's what I thought the Coalition 68 was. It's actually a lot worse. This group has a face, but it was near impossible to find. The failure upon failure of lawsuits did ultimately unveil a name, Mike Weaver. And he's not only an advocate against racetracks, he lives right across from it. The name of the coalition comes from his brother, who apparently had passed away in 1978. It happened after he was chasing his family dog onto Highway 68, apparently across from Laguna Seca, after being spooked by a car leaving the raceway. Now, in 2012, he actually tried getting this track shut down before, imposing that there was an ordinance issue and a sound infraction. And Mike Weaver, who's hiding behind a coalition name and a not-for-profit statement, could probably just be himself. Search up the name again and you'll find failure after failure of lawsuits against businesses that were trying to build in the local area, raising the same concerns, the same ridiculous demands, and ultimately the same failures. You see, in 2017, this same coalition filed against Omni Resources to block a mall being built in the area. And while you may think he's just another bloke, he's actually pretty smart. He knows how to use these lawsuits to slow things down. He used to work in the board. He knows how the municipalities work. He used his experience as chair on the board to build up lawsuits where in 2013, he had compiled 7 homeowners to complain about Laguna Seca. And now in 2023, he's doing it again, probably the same amount. Now, I need to say that all of this is easily Google-fiable information, and I did not have to dox anyone who's literally just a local public figure and spearhead for the organization. I have not looked up or contacted Mike on social media, and I do not encourage anyone to do so. No matter what, please respect the privacy of people, even if we don't like what they're doing. With that said, there's a very clear effort to try and stay away from having the name on the internet. But with that said too, why the hell do you live next to a racetrack that was there before you? Even the house you moved into was built after the racetrack was made. So is it a land grab? I think it's actually worse. It's one person that has influence with a handful of people in the area and a good knack for suing things and people when he doesn't like them. Haggerty did a piece, and it's about as iconic as it is sarcastic, where just like you and I are absolutely shocked to find that this 7-decade-old facility randomly spawned next to these homes that were built just 10 years ago. It's astonishing, isn't it? And this is normal. What makes this scarier, though, is people like Mike and this coalition are winning. Environmental fights in California never bode well for whoever it is that they're attacking. Even on Martini Works, we can't sell an intake to somebody that lives in California. It's ridiculous. Companies are getting sued millions by the EPA for tunes, and the state that was once the home for the car culture of America has turned into the villain itself. And there's a certain villain that lives literally 3 turns away from this iconic racetrack. So what will happen? I say we hope for Mike to keep shooting blanks with his lawsuits, but this uproar shows the same level of fragility most tracks have with local boards. If you put 6 mics on a board of 7 and they have the power to shut down tracks that are as infamous as Laguna Seca, it will happen. I'm Alex. Don't forget to subscribe and let me know what you think below.